We can hope beyond all hope. Hurricane Helene has made her way onto land and is now saturating the Macon, Atlanta, Athens area of Georgia. And headed up now, also unloading heavy rainfall and some winds on Asheville, North Carolina, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, that area, Rock Hill, that area up in there. So there was a video of a guy. How did the guy have access to a cell tower? Is what I want to know. Dude was in a house that he's building somewhere in Clearwater, or he said Tampa, and he is in a kayak. He's inside the house, and there's 4 feet of water in the house. And he's videoing going like, well, Hurricane Helene is passing by. This is what the inside of my brand new home that I'm building looks like. And he had thrown the, what do you call that thing that you throw in the pool? It's got the bleach tablets in it. Or the chlorine tablet. The chlorine floaty gizmo device, whatever the hell you call it. He had thrown that. He had taken that. And that was inside the room that he was floating around in his kayak. He goes, well, we're chlorinating the water. The seawater's being chlorinated. So it looks like it brought an awful lot of storm surge to areas of Tampa and Clearwater, Florida, and everywhere. I would imagine everywhere else that was on the coast. I was seeing yesterday, tracking the storm a little bit, 20-foot storm surges in some areas. Here, just for comparison's sake, or just because I remember this, when Hurricane Katrina came through Louisiana, Maggie and I refused to evacuate. Foolishly, stupidly refused to evacuate. Went to a hurricane party at our friend Garrett Carter's house. Huge, definitely huge mistake, terrible mistake. Got stuck there because the trees fell on the country roads where we were, and we couldn't get out. We burned all the chainsaws up trying to cut out. If some good Samaritans hadn't come with 36-inch long bladed Husqvarna's chainsaws and their own little Kubota tractor with a claw in the front of it to move the ginormous logs that they were cutting, we'd probably, I don't know how long we'd be stuck there. In any event, I'll never forget this about Hurricane Katrina. Max Mayfield was the director of the National Hurricane Center at the time. And so Katrina hits beginning Sunday night, August the 28th, 2005, through August the 29th, Monday, through about 10 a.m. or so. It moves pretty quick, but when she makes landfall, there was a 25-foot storm surge ahead of her. Those of you, if you've ever been to Biloxi, Mississippi, post-Katrina and pre-Katrina, then you know what I'm talking about. There were homes that were 2 miles from the Gulf Coast Parkway there. That's US 190, right? In Biloxi. They were 2 miles inland, and they were covered with a 20-foot wall of water that came in. It came in like 6-8 miles. I forget how far. It was absolutely incredible. And just the destruction that you just can't imagine. We had a 15-foot storm surge on Lake Pontchartrain, thanks to Hurricane Katrina, and then a month later, Rita came through. So no, we had 12 feet for Katrina. Depending on where you were, it could have been 20 feet. If you were at the south end, the southeastern end of Lake Pontchartrain, you got 20 feet. And there are a lot of people that were killed because they stayed in their homes or in their camps near where the lake was. I don't know why you would stay there, but I know one guy did because he shot a video and he drowned. They found the video camera after the fact and took the videotape out, but he drowned. But here in Mandeville, Louisiana, we got a 15-foot storm surge, a wall of water. For those of you Yankees, you can't imagine what a storm surge is that comes from the Gulf. You can also get a storm surge from the Atlantic. It's just, it pushes a wall. So what basically happens is, I had a weatherman explain this to me. What basically happens is, a hurricane storm has incredibly low atmospheric or barometric pressure in it. And what happens is that the weight of the storm and the barometric pressure basically pushes down on the Gulf of Mexico in this case. And as it pushes down, what's ahead of it, if it's moving north, what's ahead of it, just imagine that you've got you got a bowl of water, right? You got a bowl, and you take a can of pork and beans or whatever, and gently start to lower it into the water. The water level will rise as you put it in there. It's the same thing that happens with a hurricane. So the barometric, which is why they measure the pressure inside the storm in the eye, they measure it in millibars. Anything below 970 millibars, get the hell out. You're in trouble. I don't know what Helene was. Hurricane Katrina was 900 and set the record. It was like 970 or 958 millibars. So the water pushes down, the pressure pushes down on the water, and as the storm moves forward, everything that's ahead of it then has this wall of the water is being pushed down, and so consequently it rises. That's how you get a storm surge. Max Mayfield, I'll never forget this, listened to this on WWL radio, said there's a 25-foot storm surge ahead of this beast. If you're in New Orleans, if you're within 20 miles of the Gulf of Mexico, get the hell out. You're going to get flooded. And sure enough, the levees held during the storm Katrina, but ultimately they broke 2 days later because that wall of water stayed, and the water did not recede back out into the Gulf quickly enough, and so that's why it flooded. So all of you in the Tampa, Florida area, and in Pensacola, and Panama City, and Fort Walton Beach, and all there... And all those along the Gulf Coast, we will definitely say a rosary for you guys and for your recovery. And for those of you that were inland in Georgia, like Jeff and others had got the eye wall. Again, Maggie and I have been through this. We went through Hurricane Laura, or her parents did. Laura, when they were 40 miles from the Gulf. No, they were like closer to 50 miles. They got 130 mile an hour winds in Ragley, Louisiana, from Hurricane Laura, and Maggie's parents lost over 80 trees on their 80 acres. So these things come through. It's almost like because they don't hit the same area often unless you live in Louisiana. And we're snake bit. It's almost like it's kind of like a nature's way of clearing out underbrush and weak trees and what have you. I'm not making an excuse for the storm. It's horrible. And I'm sure that this one is going to be measured in the billions of dollars of damage. So God bless you all, and we will say a rosary of prayer. I hope you all were praying to Our Lady Star of the Sea. She is your protectress. Did we have any reports yet? Have you seen anything about how many did people die? Yeah, they had deaths. Okay, I would imagine that there would be. So you can talk it up in the Crusader Stadium chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. If you're just tuning in. Yes, I am going to talk about the topic of the morning, and that's this. 3 people so far, BK Michigan is saying. And that's this. Today is September the 26th, so some of this stuff came out yesterday. Some of it came out on the 24th. Some of this tranche newly released, I guess they were subpoenaed documents, came out on September the 16th. That's when Mark Levin got them and interviewed Barry Loudermilk. Folks, How many people's lives were ruined by the 010621 hoax? You know, the longer you're alive and the longer you listen to one Donald John Trump, and when he tells you something about the way something happened, he's almost always correct. And when he tells you that, no, that's not the way that happened, Kamala's got to do this, she's going to do it. When he says Biden did this or Biden's going to do this, or there wasn't a laptop from hell, believe the guy. He's usually right. He has been saying all along that's just not true. I asked for troops. Pelosi turned me down. I told them that they needed troops, and I almost issued an order, but Pelosi told me and the mayor of D.C. told me that they had it and that they did not need the troops because they had put the barricades up or whatever, and that I needed to just stand down. Let me tell you the end result. Let me give you the punchline on this. It's everything the conspiracy theorists have been saying. Although it's not really a conspiracy because it's right out there in the open, broad daylight, in your face. It's everything that...
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
...has been saying. They set it up. This was a false flag operation from the get-go. It was instigated by agents that were working for the deep state, probably the FBI. Well, no, we know. You know what? We should get that clip from yesterday and play it again, where not Fitzsimmons, the guy that was the testimony, the FBI secretary do, when he's asked by Thomas Massie's clip from yesterday, when he's asked, do you know how many undercover UCAs, undercover agents, how many UCAs were there on 010621? And what is the guy's name? Horowitz, Michael Horowitz. Michael Horowitz says, no, sir, Congressman, I can't give you that number, but it's in the report. Note the language. No, I can't give you the number, but it's in the report. So, yes, we had UCAs. They were there. That is a directed mission. That Ray Epps and others were there. Now, why were they there? Well, they were there as instigators. This whole thing was a setup here. They did this. Two things. One, we'll never know the truth from Mike Pence. He will be like John Dean from Watergate. He will take this all the way, and the other guy that just admitted like 5 years ago, the dude who admitted that he was Deep Throat, who was leaking stuff to Woodward and Bernstein at the Washington Post about the Watergate tapes and what Nixon was doing in the White House and whatever else he was leaking and that they were reporting on. That guy held that secret from 1972 all the way to like 2000. Trump was president. I want to say 2018. So if you're counting, that's what, 28 and 18. For 46 years, that dude sat on that secret. How many people's lives were ruined by what actually happened at Watergate? And had it been known what happened and accurately presented and reported, would Nixon ever have had to have resigned? We'll never know. So we should actually be thankful that we only had to wait 4 years, that this particular person that had knowledge of this only waited 4 years to spill the beans. Were you able to find Massie from yesterday? If you can't, I'll see it up on the screen.
News report is 2 minutes.
That's fine. That's fine. I want to play this for you, but as we get underway with this coverage here, Trump acted heroically on 010621. I almost didn't put this on YouTube because I didn't want them to flag it as being conspiratorial and what have you. This is a news story now. Listen, AI, if you're listening, dude, this is a news story. There are members of Congress now that are presenting the facts and going like, okay, we didn't know this. Liz Cheney suppressed this information and lied under oath. She lied. She was the chairman of the committee. Congress ought to bring her back in there, put her back under oath, give her a chance to fess up, but she ought to be prosecuted for perjury. How many people's lives have been ruined, or as we say in the South, ruined, by the lies that were told and the innocent people that were rounded up, hoarded, and thrown into federal pens and have been prosecuted and persecuted and have had their lives ruined. I forget how many suicides, how many people have killed themselves out of despair because they can't afford to defend themselves. Because what did they do? They were patriots. Thought they were doing the patriotic right thing, went to the Capitol in 010621 to go and cheer on what they thought was irregularities in an election. Which any fair history will look back on this and we'll have to report this, at least some of this. Here is from 2 days ago. Here is the testimony in Congress where the deputy director of the FBI is going to admit, yes, we had UCAs in that crowd.
So let me come back to January the 6th, 4.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago, sorry. There were a lot of people who thought that there were federal operatives within the crowd that day. Michael Horowitz, the DOJ's Inspector General, was on the Hill today and seemed to indicate the people who believed there were covert or confidential human sources in the crowd might actually be right. Listen to what he said.
So, but now that you've restarted it, do you have evidence of the number of confidential human sources that were operating on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
Our report will include the information in that regard.
Can you tell us today how many there were? Were there more than 100?
I'm not in a position to say that, both because it's in draft form and we have not gone through the classification review, and so I need to be careful.
Do you know how many were reimbursed for travel?
As I sit here, I don't recall the number.
But there's something in the report. I mean, this is very intriguing. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said this is being, looked at in the report. That could be that the report says, no, there weren't any, but he seems to be leaning toward, yes, there were.
Oh, I think he was definitely implying, yes, there were, because
when
he was asked, well, how many of them, these confidential human sources, which are effectively spies for the FBI, it's a tool of law enforcement, when asked how many were reimbursed for travel, he said he didn't recall the number off the top of his head, which indicates there's a number.
All right, thank you. That's Kerri Urbahn of Fox News. That's exactly it. Well, I can't give you the exact number, but it's going to be in the report. So there were. Let me take you to the pages of Truth's social media. 9:23 a.m. yesterday. I'm surprised he didn't talk about this. Did he talk about this at his press conference? I saw a half an hour, and I didn't see him mention it. Shocking breaking news. This is Donald J. Trump. As exposed by the great John Solomon, a real journalist who cares about the truth, and the great work of Congressman Barry Loudermilk and Republicans on the House Oversight Committee, the deep state chose to disregard my direct authorization of at least 10,000 National Guard troops to ensure that Washington, D.C. was safe and secure on 010621. These deep state subversives disobeyed the president's directives, which would have prevented any unrest that day. January 6, as is known, would never have taken place. These revelations end the sham J6 civil hoaxes and are the lawless D.C. case brought by deranged Jack Smith, which has already been demolished by the United States Supreme Court's historic immunity and Flesher decision. More on this when we come back. President Trump on Truth social media. Now that the beans have basically been spilled. When this bow breaks and the FOIA requests are all fulfilled and all the witnesses are finally heard and we know and all the details of what actually happened on 010621 are told. Imagine what can be released and declassified by a POTUS 47 Trump in February of 2025. First of all, anyone that was convicted of anything that wasn't a violent offense, if you didn't actually shoot at or harass or beat a cop with a club or whatever weapon you could have picked up inside the Capitol that day, you're going to get pardoned. He's going to pardon or commute the sentence, or maybe a combination of both. But imagine what would be learned. First of all, you get the remainder of all the JFK files. He's promised this to RFK Jr. I will release the files that I promised that I would, and I didn't release because Mike Pompeo and Bill Barr told me not to. That the deep state would be forever damaged if I did. It would harm our country, so I didn't do it. Release all of those documents, and then release everything that has been kept under cloak and dagger that was known by the 010621 committee. They're all liars. They're all perjured themselves. Fat Jerry Nadler, perjurer. Liz Cheney, perjurer. Shifty melonhead Adam Schiff. Hey, by the way, since we now know that Schiff has perjured himself, that he lied, and we're going to play you the clips in a minute here, that he lied while he was on that committee, and he lied in his position as a member of the House of Representatives in the public statements that he made. This guy's running for the United States Senate. Congress ought to, Speaker Zion King ought to censure Congressman Schiff. There's an election coming up, so he's either going to be Senator Schiff. Can you imagine this? This guy is a United States Senator. This lying, thieving, conniving punk who conspired with Alexander Vindman to set up President Trump for Shampeachment 1.0. This guy's a traitor. Shifty Adam Schiff, melonhead Schiff, ought to be treated like the treasonous traitor that he is. He ought to be prosecuted under every sedition act that we have on the books. He ought to be tried, and if he's found convicted, he ought to get the appropriate penalty, which for that is execution. Shifty Adam Schiff, I'm going to go out and I'm going to say this. Shifty Adam Schiff has done more damage to the United States than the Rosenbergs ever dreamed of doing, and they were executed for it. Look it up. Is it Joel and Ethel Rosenberg, I want to say? Schiff has lied and done more damage to the United States than Joel and Ethel Rosenberg ever dreamed of doing. And they were tried, and they were convicted, and they were hanged as traitors. What was that, 1958? Having a steel trap memory, folks, is a curse sometimes. I remember things. 1953. If you're just joining us, let me start at the top here. September 26, 2024, 9:23 a.m., True Social Media, Donald J. Trump's account. Shocking breaking news. As exposed by the great John Solomon, a real journalist who cares about the truth, and the great work of Congressman Barry Loudermilk and Republicans on the House Oversight Committee, the deep state chose to disregard my direct authorization of at least 10,000 National Guard troops to ensure that Washington, D.C. was safe and secure on January the 6th, 2021. These deep state subversives disobeyed the president's directives, which would have prevented any unrest that day, January the 6th, as it is known, would never have taken place. These revelations end the sham J6 civil hoaxes and the lawless D.C. case brought by deranged Jack Smith, which has already been demolished by the United States Supreme Court's historic immunity and Fisher decisions. I called for everyone to act peacefully and patriotically and demanded that D.C. be protected. The deep state and crazy Nancy Pelosi, who admitted to her daughter on videotape that she was responsible, have to be held to account, including for the damages, wasted resources, and time spent defending the witch hunts and hoaxes. We have to save our broken justice system. By the way, in the Crusader Stadium chat room, I am in there. Maggie's in there. You can join. We'll be posting a lot of this in there. crusadechannel.com/chat. Does that sound like a Hitler to you? We have to save our broken justice system. He still thinks he can save it. That does not sound like a guy that wants to start a revolution is going to bring the Constitution to an end. Let me give you some nuts and bolts. Before we play Barry Loudermilk, I don't know how we missed this, because this is from September the 24th with Mark Levin. Not that I watch Levin, because I don't. But this is, folks, this stuff is earth-shattering. But before I do that, I want you to hear. Let's just gauge the level of depravity here. We have laws. We have laws. We have rules. We have customs. We have traditions. At one point in time, I believed that we were a kind of Christian people. At one point in time, I believed that most Americans were good, decent people. I think most Americans today are still good, decent people. They have run aground and afoul of the faith and of practicing as good, decent Christian people, but that can be restored. One confession, one trip to the confessional, one broken heart, one sincere act of contrition can restore that. That's not hard. It's just that you have to have the will to want to make things better. There is no hope for people that are running our government, though. There just isn't. Play the Trump clip where he talks about Pelosi, digital media file number 6. This woman is an arch criminal villain. The laws do not apply to her. This woman, like her father before her, who was a criminal, crooked, big Democrat machine mayor of Baltimore, number 5. Number five. Said 6, 5. I don't have my reading glasses. 5 looks like a 6 to old people. To old people like me, Sonny, that 5 looked like a 6. It looked like a 6 to me, Sonny. Play digital media file number 5. This is yesterday at Trump Tower.
But they went in there, and everyone knows they threatened the 25th Amendment. They threatened him with the 25th Amendment. They said, Joe, you're going to get out. And Nancy Pelosi led the charge. And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that. Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that. And she should also be prosecuted for J6 because she turned down 10,000 or any number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard. And I hope you all read John Solomon and what John Solomon wrote 2 days ago, because if you read it, you'd see that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. It's a scam. It's a scam.
What did they send Martha Stewart to the federal pen for, ladies and gentlemen? I'm no fan of Martha Stewart. I kind of liked her once upon a time. She's 84, trying to make herself look like she's 44. Going all manner of plastic surgeries and posing for the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated and all that crap. But if Martha Stewart was guilty, and I don't know that Martha Stewart was guilty, then Nancy Pelosi should be tried on the exact same charges and sent to the exact same prison for about 10 times the sentence. Because Martha Stewart made, a piddling amount of money. Supposedly, that someone in Congress supposedly told Martha Stewart that she should short a stock because the SEC was going to come down. I forget which company it was. And supposedly Martha Stewart took the advice and stole the stock. Now, Martha Stewart's never, she maintained her innocence to this day. But to make her an example out of her, to prove that the deep state has a big giant set of balls and can crush any little peon that gets in their way, and to keep the rest of us peasants in line, they prosecuted, persecuted, convicted, then in a rigged trial, convicted Martha Stewart, and they sent her to jail. There are photographs. Maggie can find them and put them in the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. And those of you watching on YouTube and on our Roku and out there on X, we can show you the pictures. Martha Stewart was photographed in her prison jumpsuit. She was embarrassed. She was completely humiliated and shamed. And Perp walked into that jail. They did that on purpose. They did that to make an example out of her. And then you want to really go, Alex? You want me to really go Alex Jones on you? Do you want me to tell you what I have actually heard?
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Or Martha Stewart was involved in some of these Epstein-like activities and knew where some of the bodies were buried or where some of the kids were being hidden. I've never read a book or anything on this. Someone has told me this in the past, so I'm going to announce this as a very unsubstantiated piece of hearsay, but it makes sense. And they told her, blab, say a word, and you're going down. And apparently Martha Stewart went like, you can't touch me. I'm Martha freaking Stewart. They named a paint company after me, bitch. I'm in Home Depot. And that's when they went, oh yeah, watch this. What year was Martha Stewart convicted? 2000? 2001, somewhere up in there. In any event, my point being that they got Martha Stewart for shorting stock that 2004, saying that she had insider information. Nancy, this is the second time that Pelosi has sold stock, that the Justice Department was going to announce action against a major corporation. These aren't coincidences, folks. You know, people like Pelosi think they can get away with this, and they think they can do it with impunity. Now, let's get to the meat and taters of what we have here. We'll start at the top. There's one tweet out there. You only need to go to the one tweet. We have it. There's 3 clips in it. The first one, so just start at the top, Maggie. Play Pelosi. What you're going to hear on radio and what you're going to see on YouTube and on Roku on our Crusade Channel TV and on X.com, you're going to see Nancy Pelosi. This is some kind of a bunker, probably across the street from the Capitol building. And Pelosi's on the phone, and you'll find out she's on the phone with Governor Ralph Northam. Okay? He's the governor of Virginia on 010621. And listen carefully to what she asks him to do.
Governor, I don't know if you have been approached about the Virginia National Guard. Mr. Hoyer was speaking to Governor Hogan, but I still think you probably need the okay of the federal government in order to come into another jurisdiction. Thank you.
Secretary of the Army.
Oh my gosh, they're just breaking windows. They're doing all kinds of. It's really that they said somebody was shot. It was just horrendous, and all at the instigation of the President of the United States. Okay, thank you, Governor. I appreciate what you're doing, and if you don't mind, I'd like to stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Virginia Guard has been called in.
You know, I'm just talking to Governor Northam, and what he said is they sent 200 state police and a unit of the National Guard.
Couple things you need to take away if you weren't paying close attention. Let me break this down for you. 1, the Virginia National Guard would already have been there had Trump's order not been disobeyed. Let me repeat. The Virginia National Guard would already have been there. So would the Maryland. She said Governor Hogan, governor of Maryland at the time, I believe. You would have had units from the nearby states that made the cession of property to D.C., which was Maryland and Virginia. At the time, the 10 mile square with all the fine ornaments of human life, as Patrick Henry called it. So she's calling Northam and going like, yeah, I made a mistake. I need those troops. You need to send those troops on up here. Secondly, she knows that her daughter, Alexandria, is kneeling right there, or the cameraman is right there with a 4K camera. They're videotaping, they're filming the whole thing. You can't see it in the picture. There's a boom mic there to make sure that they get good, clean audio. She wants it on tape that the President of the United States has instigated this. Okay? That's the second thing is, okay, yeah, I screwed up. There should be National Guard troops here. Can you send them now? And number two, this is all Trump's fault. He instigated it. They began the case against him. In other words, they were prepared for this. They were ready to roll with this and ready to accuse him that this was all his fault on the day. And there's your proof right there. On the day of 010621. Now, go to the second clip. This is in a tweet from a guy named Robert who follows all this. I don't know who the guy is. He's an anonymous, but in any event, he's got great intel. Play the clip, the second clip. The second clip is pushing up on the screen so I can see. Okay, it's Mark Levin. This is Mark Levin interviewing Congressman Barry Loudermilk. I want you to pay this is last Sunday. I want you to pay on Levin's Liberty and whatever his show is called. Life, Liberty, and Levin. I want to be very close attention because Barry Loudermilk has been on the subcommittee that has been investigating the hoax. There's been investigating, okay, was the government in on this? You have to read that report, which we will. But listen to what, listen to what Loudermilk tells Levin about what Trump did on January the 4th, which is important, and January the 6th.
We knew that he had done multiple transcribed interviews with the committee, but there was one that was just commonly referred to as the missing Ornato interview. And our team, through a lot of diligence and digging, we were able to find that. And exactly what you just said was in there, that he had testified to the committee that he heard the conversation with Mark Meadows offering up to 10,000 troops. And even in early January, not long after the attack on the Capitol, Vanity Fair, of all publications, had ran an article that Trump had offered National Guard and told Secretary Miller, you have full authorization to get the Guard ready. That was in January by a liberal publication. So there is much more evidence. We even have evidence from the White House transcribed interviews that we received from the White House employees, where one of them said that responded to a question by the Select Committee, which was, when President Trump first heard of the attack on the Capitol, what was his response? And this White House employee who was physically with the president that day said, his immediate response was, get Pelosi and Milley on the phone and see what help they need. There are several instances of on the record where he had offered and even was trying to get people to take the National Guard. But it was Pelosi, it was Bowser that turned down the offer.
Bowser was the mayor of D.C. at the time. You know, we were there, me and Richard Barrett. We broadcast this whole thing. So and many of you listened to it and watched it. We had a front row seat. We covered the whole thing. Did you hear that? That's Congressman Barry Loudermilk. Now, remember, there were J6 010621 hearings that were closed-door hearings. The media was not let in. They were done off the record. This is where that's coming from. The closed-door sessions that Liz Cheney and her buddies are. Look, I think that this corruption goes so high. Who's the president of NBC News? He's in on this. NBC News is the parent company of MSNBC. They know this. They are all in on this because they had to be feeding this intel to Rick Madcow and the rest of those anchors. You need to drag the presidents of the three media companies, CBS, ABC, and NBC, need to be, the CEOs and the executives need to be dragged into hearings of Congress, and they need to be made to tell, what did you know and when did you freaking know? Remember that with Oliver North back in 1988 in the Iran-Contra hearing? What did you know and when did you know it? What did Barry Loudermilk just say? Trump was physically hurt. Now, why didn't the American people ever hear this? This has never been disclosed. I have to, if you want the document, Maggie can get the document for you. It's on Twitter. Let's see here. You know what? The Don't tell me I closed that window. I didn't close. No, I didn't close the window. Okay. The document is in the tweet from this guy, Robert, and the document says, I'll read it to you. House Administration Oversight Committee, Chairman Barry Loudermilk, Oversight Admin, September 16, 2024. Previously concealed by the Biden-Harris administration's Department of Defense, the subcommittee has uncovered statements by key personnel involved in the deployment of the D.C. National Guard to the United States Capitol on 010621. And then in all bold, these new transcripts indicate that senior Pentagon officials unnecessarily delayed the D.C. National Guard response to the Capitol on January 6 due to optics concerns. Translation, they wanted this to happen. Folks, I'm still processing this because I just saw this morning. Trump posted it up, some of it yesterday morning. I didn't see it. I followed this Robert guy, and he posted all this last night while I was sleeping. So I'm still processing this. This is as big and as damaging as COVID. Remember, they planned COVID. Event 201 in New York, where they game planned how they were going to roll this out, tested their media strategies, what they were going to say, who was going to say it, how they're going to get everyone on the page. The whole thing was planned out. This event was scripted and planned out in advance. You know, and I'm pissed off about it, and I want to know who did it. I want to know who was responsible for this. Was Joe Biden? Was Barack Obama? Was the former president involved directly in this? Because she sure as hell was monitoring that election, wasn't he? Were the Obamas involved in this? Who else? We know that Pelosi was involved. Was Schumer involved in this? Was the Schumer just a useful idiot? Who else was involved in this? Was James Clapper involved in this? Did Bill Barr have knowledge of this? Who was the head of the FBI at the time? Christopher Wray. Did Christopher Wray do this? Who knew? This has to go up to the highest levels. They planned this. They planned this, and this is an act of war against hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions, if you want to just take all the Trump voters, citizens of the United States. That was orchestrated by the government. I don't think I'm exaggerating. And it's disgusting.